Thank you, Michael. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Cohn was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1960. He is dyslexic, but as a child, this was not diagnosed, and he had serious problems at school. By the time he was 11, he had already attended 4 different schools. His teachers often referred to him as an idiot, and his behaviour frequently got him into trouble. It was a long, hard road, but Gary did eventually graduate from high school, and he got his first job selling aluminium window frames. At that time, he started to develop an interest in the financial markets, and one day whilst working in New York City, took some time out to watch the traders on the floor at Wall Street. On leaving that day, he saw a businessman hailing a cab for the airport, and he decided quickly to take a risk. He asked if he could share the ride, and then spent the next hour convincing the Wall Street broker that he was an expert on financial options. He was interviewed the following week, having spent every waking hour in between reading textbooks on options, and managed to get a job in the commodities exchange. Gary Cohn is now the president of Goldman Sachs, one of the biggest banks in the world. It's not about what happens, but how you respond. Gary Cohn had a difficult childhood and few opportunities to build a career. He responded by taking a risk and working hard, and is now a hugely successful businessman. Chris Moon had a very different job. He was working for a charity clearing landmines in Mozambique when he stood in the wrong place. A mine went off and it blew away his lower right arm and right leg. He lost a considerable amount of blood, and doctors did not expect him to survive. But he did. And less than a year after leaving hospital, he completed the London Marathon. Chris Moon now runs the world's toughest ultramarathons for charity. It's not about what happens, but how you respond. Chris Moon almost lost his life, and he did lose most of 2 limbs. He responded by not giving up when his situation looked hopeless, and by showing outstanding courage and determination to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity. Now, these are powerful, inspiring stories, but maybe beyond the experience of many of us. So perhaps my third example should be a little more ordinary. About 10 years ago, I found myself shopping for a large bookcase in IKEA. On leaving the store, pleased with my purchase, I suddenly came to a stop at the edge of the car park. And I looked at the box, and I looked at my car. And I looked at my car again, and I looked at the box again. It definitely would not fit. And then things got worse. The box, which had been delicately balanced on the top of this trolley, slid off to one side, crashed to the ground and split open, spilling bits of wood across the car park. Now at that point, I seriously considered just giving up and driving home, abandoning the bookcase where it lay. But perhaps this was an opportunity. The whole box wouldn't fit in the car. What about the individual bits of wood? Almost an hour later, I finally forced the doors and the boot shut. And I squeezed into the driver's seat, sweating profusely, muttering inappropriate words for a very uncomfortable 60-mile drive home. It's not about what happens, but how you respond. Bad planning led to a bookcase scattered across IKEA car park. I responded by building a 3D jigsaw puzzle inside my car and got it home. We've still got that bookcase. But back to Gary Cohn and Chris Moon. What do those 2 stories have in common? And what can we learn from them so that when challenged, we can respond as positively as Gary and Chris? The first thing that helps us to respond well is perspective. To us, it seemed like Gary Cohn took an enormous risk when he jumped in that taxi to try to blag his way into a job. But did he really? A risk of embarrassment or exposure, perhaps. No more than that. Gary Cohn had nothing to lose, and that sense of perspective served him well. The second thing that helps us to respond well is to think about how we behave. We're all familiar with the importance of corporate values in our working lives. Values such as courage, integrity, and respect. It's relatively easy to live these values when things are going well, but much more difficult, yet even more important, to exemplify such values when the chips are down. The third and final thing we can learn from these stories is the importance of resilience, of not giving up, of living with the mantra that is, I get knocked down, but I get up again. Now, we might not reach the corporate heights of Gary Cohn, and we might not be able to show the courage and determination of Chris Moon, but we can take inspiration from those stories. We can keep a sense of perspective. We can think and act in a principled and value-driven way. And we can persevere and be resilient until we succeed. Thank you.